Hello, all, and thank you for welcoming me into your headphones. This is Fernando, and I'm going to be reviewing the 2018 directorial debut of Jonah Hill, Mid90's. Short synopsis of the movie. Lost teen Stevie seeks to find his place in the world as he struggles to fit in at school and faces an unsettling home life. After meeting a gang of older skaters in LA, Stevie finally feels like he belongs. Safe for now away from his violent brother and his emotionally despondent mother, Stevie knows summer can't last forever in the 90s haze. So let's talk about my initial reaction when I first saw this movie. I remember when I saw the trailer for it and I was a little bit intrigued by it, mostly because the 90s has always been a time frame that I have always related to in my head. Although I was born in 1994, I have somewhat of a relationship with it because of my older brother, who grew up primarily through the 90s since he was born in 1986. So a lot of my mantra, a lot of my habits, a lot of my music tastes, a lot of my movie tastes came from my brother. And because all of his 90s personalities and traits and likes and dislikes pretty much carried over to me, I've always had somewhat of a relationship with the 90s. So watching this movie over, it was kind of like going back in time to when I was pretty small. And I remember a lot of this stuff. I remember seeing my cousins being into this sort of music, being into skateboarding, and it didn't just relate to me in the sense that I was born in the 90s. It related to me in the sense that I felt I could relate with the main character. The main character, Sonny, is this kid who's just trying to find his way in the world. And I mean, who doesn't remember those times in middle school when you are just trying to figure out who you are and you're just trying to fit in? It's a tough time, and I know exactly what it's like. So when I see this character making his way, and then he finds this ragtag group of skateboarders, and he pretty much just falls in line with them, and they don't really question it. They don't really dwell on why this kid is here. They just accept him because he's an outcast like them. And this I related to the most because I remember in middle school I was coming over from this elementary that I had barely been at for 2 years. So I was a little fresh, and then when I came to middle school, it was pretty much just a find your way mentality. And I fell into a group of friends that were nowhere near the popular group, nowhere near the athletic group, but we were all just weird in our own way, and we all just kind of fell in together. Not through normalcy, but that we were weird, but we accepted that we were weird. I remember they were the reason that I got into heavy metal music in middle school. I was the type of kid that was wearing black. I remember my parents were freaking out because I wanted to be a little rebel, and I was wearing all these metal shirts, black pants, and yeah, I remember being that kid, the kid that just wants to fit in. And to see the main character in this movie, and you see him just want to desperately fit in, and you just recognize that, and you want to sympathize with that because you know how it is. And I really felt that. And aside from the part where you're relating with the main character, this movie just has a great story, and it's a great directorial debut for Jonah Hill. I really like this movie as a first movie for him. You could tell it was a real passion project. You could tell it was something that was really close to him, and you could tell that he was probably that kid when he was growing up, that he was just trying to fit in and he just wanted to find his way in the world. And I really like that you could tell. I really like that you could tell that it was just it was him. Just not maybe slightly different, but yeah, you could tell like he really poured his heart into it. And it's really interesting how he went with shooting this movie because he really went the straight 90s route. This is a period piece, And when I say period piece, I don't just mean the filming, the framing of it, because it is filmed in that weird square framing of the 90s. When you're watching like on a widescreen TV like I have, you could see the square and it feels 90s. It was made for one of those tube TVs that you grew up with if you were old enough to have one of those tube TVs. But you can tell that, yeah, he wanted to make this a strictly period piece. And yeah, it's not just in the filming, but it's also in the way the characters act. Because the way the characters act, it is straight 90s, early 2000s. It's very not PC, and it's very period. Um, so you can't really. Some people will judge it. I think he got a little bit of flack for it, but for the most part, I don't think he got super judged on the language in the film because, like I said, it's a period piece. It's something you're gonna have to deal with, and it's a part of our past. So, I mean, if anything, we just learn from it and move on. But aside from the language, the movie was really well made, especially for his first film. And it's funny because when you see directors in their first outing, you can see a little bit of how they're filming, and it sometimes comes off as scary. The only one that I really haven't seen that with is Ben Affleck, because I mean, you see Gone Baby Gone, and he loves to move the camera. Kevin Smith has a bit about it that every time they were filming a movie, Ben Affleck would always taunt him about moving the camera because Kevin Smith is notorious for not moving it. But yeah, you could tell like with a lot of new directors, and it could just be very well their directing style. And because I mean, he's worked in big budget films, he's worked with I mean amazing talent. He's worked with amazing directors like Martin Scorsese. So you would think that he has picked up his own little book of directing along the way. And you could see it throughout this film. You could see that he really just has his own view of directing and his own unique way of doing it, which is all well and good because I mean this movie turned out to be really great. Another thing I thought that was interesting was that for the skateboarders, Ray and fuck shit. I'm sorry, that's his name. I don't know what else to tell you. They are actual skateboarders. He went the route of doing uh, hiring actual skateboarders to be in the film, and they actually did a really good job. Especially the actor who played Ray, who isn't an actor at all. He's a skateboarder. He did a really good job at playing that leader role of the group that pulled everyone together and that everyone pretty much played off of his energy. And there's that one scene in the film where Stevie's having a really tough he's having a really tough day and Ray pulls him aside and then they just go skateboarding. It's just him and Stevie, and that scene I really related to because I mean I had plenty of those times when I was a kid, and I had plenty of those moments with one of my best friends. And I wouldn't say it was the leader of the group, but it was that one person in the group that I would say is the focal point, the person that everyone would meet at their place to hang out. We would go after school to his house to hang out while our parents were on their way to pick us up. We were into wrestling, things of that sort. Me, I was a horrible skateboarder, like Stevie in the movie. I'm pretty sure he probably skateboards better than me because, I mean, every time I tried to skateboard, I fell flat on my ass. And that's the truth. Another storyline that is pretty prevalent throughout the film is Stevie's relationship with his mom and his brother. His brother constantly picks on him and he's constantly kicking his ass. And there's points where it just gets super violent and you're just feeling for this kid, and you could tell that even in his home where he's supposed to feel safe. He just doesn't. And you can tell as to why he's trying to find his way in the world. And it really reflects in the movie by showing that one point in your life where your friends are just a little bit more important than your family, because you feel like your friends are always going to be there for you. I want to say it's a magical point in your life, because that's the one point in your life where you have these outside people who have no reason to care for you, but they do, and they care for you immensely, and you care for them immensely. It's a really magical moment, and you get to see it in this film, and you get to really feel it with the characters. And if you came from a background that you had that moment in your life, it's a nice walk down memory lane to see. For me, it was a great thing to see, because it just brought back so many happy memories of my friends and all the times we would just mess around, and it made me want to text all my old friends again. And it was a really great moment for me in my life. It was a moment where it's these boys who are in this troubling point of our lives where we're not kids anymore, but we're not yet teenagers, and we're just really trying to take grasp of who we are, and we want to show people who we are. We're trying to become masculine in the world, and you could tell this is one of the major themes of the movie, so it was really easy for me to relate to. Along with Stevie's relationship with his brother, I never had that type of tumultuous relationship with my brother. We were 8 years apart, but it was never as violent as that. It was always just, we were so far apart in age where we didn't really get each other. And it wasn't until I was older that I was finally able to connect with my brother. But seeing that relationship, you could see as to why Stevie wants to break out of his domestic life, and he wants to find people that care about him. And his mom isn't a bad mom. He has a pretty good relationship with his mother. But at that age, you're not friends with your parents. You don't really get them. They don't get you. So you can see why he's trying to find these people. And there's a scene where Stevie is hanging out with his skater friends, and his brother just kind of shows up out of nowhere, and he gets into an altercation with one of the skater friends, and he just gets completely punked and just looks like a fool, because throughout the film he is this big tough guy, and he completely gets punked by the skaters. And you could tell Stevie was just so happy to see that his brother was put in his place finally by someone that was bigger than him and stronger than him. Because you can tell that Stevie had that animosity towards his brother. And you could tell that he just wanted his brother to feel like he felt. And it was a pretty good scene in the movie. It was probably one of my favorites, just to see the bully get bullied. The kid who plays his brother, I mean, Jesus Christ, that kid has some acting chops on him. I mean, you see him in every Oscar bait movie. I don't know if that's a universal term. I've always called them that. But yeah, I've always called movies that you can tell are trying to make it to the Oscars. You could always see that they have this type of aura around them, and I've always called it that. So I mean, that throughout my reviews, I will always refer to these type of movies as Oscar bait movies. But back to the film. Yeah, the kid who plays the brother, Lucas Hedges, Jesus, you're always seeing him in these Oscar bait movies, because he's a really great actor. He's amazing. I've seen him in some other movies. I think the first film I saw him in was Moonrise Kingdom. And then I remember seeing him like sparingly throughout films. I had seen some scenes of Ben is Back. I never watched that film personally. But I mean, it seemed the kid's got really good acting chops. The one that I've been wanting to see lately is Honey Boy. So hopefully that might be my next review. But we'll see how that works out. back to the film at hand. The one thing that I really liked about this film is that it doesn't really just play on the nostalgia factor that most movies play on, especially when they do a period piece where it has to do with the 90s. It seems like the 90s movies tend to have the more nostalgia factor, mostly because I think filmmakers know that the kids who grew up in the 90s are now in their late 20s, early 30s now, so they're able to really play on that nostalgia factor. But this movie doesn't really have that much nostalgia in it. It's mostly just a story set in the 90s, but it's really relatable through the themes that it's portraying. Like Stevie being the kid who doesn't really have a place in the world, trying to find his place in this ragtag group of skateboarders. The group of skateboarders is timeless. I mean, I have friends that I can equate to each character in that skateboarding team. Maybe not super directly, but through traits of their own. And it is interesting to see because at one point you do see the group kind of start to unravel because they're each going their own way. Some people might be getting more attention, some people might not be getting more attention. Stevie's going up in the ranks of being in this group, and maybe another person the group doesn't like that he's moving up in the ranks. So you can see like the group begins to unravel a little bit. And another thing I found interesting about this film is that so in today's world, drunk driving is a very prevalent thing. We're always told never to drive drunk. You see commercials about it. We've been fed commercials about it ever since we were kids. But in this world, I don't think drunk driving was as an epidemic, especially in the 90s. I don't remember drunk driving being that big of a deal. And you can pretty much tell the way that Jonah Hill handles drunk driving in this movie because there's a scene near the end of the film where they are leaving this skate spot and they are all wasted beyond belief. And you could tell that they're uneasy about driving home, but they still do it anyways because, I mean, they're kids and they're going to make stupid mistakes. But even then, you kind of get the sense that the whole drunk driving theme never really crossed their mind in the sense that it's not being pushed towards them as much as being pushed today. So that part I found really interesting. And then you can see how the movie wraps up where they're in the hospital. Stevie's brother is there waiting for him with an orange juice. And you can see that Stevie's brother kind of has this change of heart. I don't want to say it's a full change of heart, but I want to say it's a step in the right direction because you can kind of tell that there's something different. You can tell that something's changing and that he's not going to be as much of a dick towards Stevie. And it's just in like the smallest little gesture of giving orange juice. And maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe I'm not. Who knows? It's my review. Leave me alone. And then there's a part where the mom goes to the waiting room and all the kids are there waiting. They're asleep. They've probably been there all night waiting for him to wake up. She wakes them up and they all go inside to his hospital room, and they go inside, and one of the characters, who is called Fourth Grade because he doesn't really talk much, he keeps to himself and he says a lot of really stupid stuff at times, so they've always just called him Fourth Grade. And Fourth Grade shows them this film that he's been making, behind the scenes really, and it's shot through that fisheye camera lens that was really prevalent in the 90s, especially for skateboarding. And it really shows, like, even though they have these tough times, that they are still friends in the end. They are still very close. At least for that point in their life, they are what really matters to each other. And that's how the film wraps up. And it was a little abrupt, I will admit. But I don't hate that it wrapped up like that. I really don't. I don't mind that it did, but it was really a great film, and I really liked it. One thing I really did want to highlight about this film was the soundtrack. Usually with films, I will always look at the soundtrack. I don't know why. It's always just something I've been interested in. And this film soundtrack was amazing. It had just the right amount of hip hop. And not just the right amount of hip hop, the best hip hop that he could have played. And you could tell that it was all music that Jonah Hill liked from the 90s. And I really like when you could see the director's mind through their music. And I thought that was a little fun tidbit that he had added to the film. But overall, from this cast and from the story, from the music, from the setting, from the time frame, I had really loved this movie, and it was really a great movie. And there was a reason why I bought this movie the first day it came out on Blu-ray. For me, if I have to buy a movie the first day it comes out on Blu-ray, it's something that's special to me. And this movie will always have a special place in my soul, because I mean, it always just brings back these memories of when times were simpler, when you were a kid, and that one point in your life where your friends were everything to you. And it's something that I will always cherish. The end has come, and I'd like to take this time to thank you for listening to me rant about one of my favorite movies. If you're listening to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcasts, please like, share, and subscribe. To hear more from us here at The Rollback, head to therollback.net to hear me and my colleagues rant about various movies. I'm Fernando, and this was The Rollback. Cut it.